Y'all, I think this Southern Cal Oregon game coming up this weekend, 3:30 game on Saturday. I think this is going to be a great game. Oregon sitting on the 1 loss, Southern Cal sitting on the 2 losses, but only one of those Southern Cal losses is a conference loss because you got to remember one of their losses came to Notre Dame. So this is a massive game, not only because this is 2 good teams this year and 2 good brands, just an interesting game, Southern Cal and Oregon, sort of a throwback to the Pac-12. These 2 teams used to play pretty regularly when they were in the Pac-12, going at it again this year now, of course, as members of the Big Ten. So you've got not only that, but like these teams are still alive for the playoff. I don't think either of these teams is going to make the Big Ten championship game. You've got Ohio State and Indiana, of course, still sitting there with 0 losses, not just in conference, but overall. Looks like barring just some sort of complete meltdown by one or both of those teams over the last 2 weeks of the regular season. It looks like that will be your Big Ten championship game, Ohio State and Indiana. But how many Big Ten teams are going to get into the playoff? Now, obviously, a lot of that depends on this game here. You've got Oregon with just the 1 loss, came at home to Indiana. Southern Cal with the 2 losses, kind of a bad loss to Illinois, and then that loss to Notre Dame. But with each team only having the 1 conference loss, this game is just absolutely massive. Big advantage here for Oregon having this game at home. Obviously, one of the best home field advantages probably in all of college football. This is going to be a great game. 2 good coaching staffs here. Lincoln Riley. I've criticized Lincoln Riley over the years. It's all the defensive stuff, though. And if I'm a Southern Cal fan, that kind of thing still worries me. But obviously, offensively, he's been a genius for the better part of a decade. He's got another great quarterback now with this Maya Villa. I don't know how to pronounce it, whatever the Gilligan's Island name of that quarterback for Southern Cal. And look, let's be honest. And look, teams can do what they want, obviously. If a team doesn't put the kid's name on the back of the jersey, then I don't really care what the kid's name is. That's just my thoughts on it. There's a handful of teams that do this. I know it's tradition. They don't put the names on there. That's fine. But you're watching 15 college football games a day like I am. You look up there and you go, oh, wow, that was a great catch. Who was that? And then there's no name on the back of the jersey. I don't, believe it or not, I don't have every player's number memorized and associated with a name for 140 college football teams. So Southern Cal doesn't put their names on the back of the jersey, so they must not care what the player's name is. So therefore, I don't either. But I can't pronounce the name of that Southern Cal quarterback. But he's had a really good year, which again, no surprise. Every single year, it seems like Lincoln Riley's got an amazing offense with a Heisman level quarterback. I don't think Maya Villa is going to win the Heisman this year, but he's having a really good year. You look up the road at Oregon there. What Dan Lanning has done there in terms of the talent that he's accumulated is unbelievable. It's almost an NFL roster up there. They've just got talent at every position group. Now, they've been beat up bad at the wide receiver position. A lot of injuries there. They need to get some of those guys back. When I've watched Oregon play this year, they look like a bunch of really talented individuals. They don't. It seems like something's missing when I watch Oregon play this year. And it's not talent. Because, again, from an individual player standpoint, you can look and you can go, wow, the quarterback's pretty good. They got some good running backs. The offensive line is pretty good. The defense is pretty good. The wide receivers, when healthy, are pretty good. But this is something I've talked about a lot with Oregon this year. Yeah, the overwhelming talent. Love Dan Lanning. Love the coaching staff. Love what he's doing there. The sort of the enthusiasm and the sort of drive that Dan Lanning has. I love what they have going on up there. I watch Oregon play this year, and it just seems like they're almost there. It's really hard to describe. I don't know if you're an Oregon fan. Is what I'm saying making any sense? I think Oregon's a really good team. I've got them in the top 10 of my ranking, like everybody else does. So I'm not crapping on them at all. It's hard for me to describe. I don't know. It's like watching a race car go 80 miles an hour, and you're like, wow, that's impressive, 80 miles an hour. But can it go 100? It seems like there's more. Now, to be fair, last year we said a lot of those same things about Ohio State, right? Super talented team. But you watched them during the regular season. They had the loss to Oregon. They had the loss to Michigan. Ryan Day's on the hot seat again. And it's like, it's all these talented players, but they play Michigan and they run the ball and don't go anywhere. Why aren't they throwing it? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? And then the playoffs came around, and Ohio State had no problem taking it from that 80 mile an hour to the 100, and they ran through the playoffs. So I think there's more there for Oregon, but when again, you watch them play at Penn State, very close win, could have easily lost that game. Same thing true with the game. They did lose to Indiana. They had the game against Iowa. Was it Iowa? Yeah, where they won sort of in the last couple of minutes of the game. Again, those are good wins. I'm not knocking them. They won those games with the exception of Indiana. But when you watch them play, it's just it seems like there's more there, and we're not really seeing it. I think we're going to have to see it in this game if Oregon wants to have a chance to win. Hey, shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring today's video, and I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. And I pulled something up here over on the Sleeper app. I'm going to take both quarterbacks this week over on the passing number. Dante Moore, 228.5 yards is the expected passing number over on Sleeper. I think he blows by that. And same thing with the Southern Cal quarterback, Maya Villa. I can't pronounce these names. It is what it is. Over 248.5 passing yards. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think a lot of points are going to be scored. Oregon's a 10.5-point home favorite, which seems a little high. But I think both teams are going to move the ball here. So shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring today's video. You can download the app down below. Use promo code LOU, L-O-U, and they're going to give you they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So you deposit $100, you'll have $200 in your account. You deposit $50, you'll have $100. That's in addition to the other promotion they've got going where download the app, promo code LOU, create a new account, and they're just going to give you a free $20 play. So for that, you don't even have to make a deposit. It's just download the app, create a new account, promo code LOU, L-O-U, and you get yourself a free $20 play. I am going to take more on both Dante Moore and the quarterback for Southern Cal. I've got a third play or a third pick that I'm going to add to that I'm going to talk about in a later video this afternoon or tomorrow. But I love these two picks here over on Sleeper. Make sure you download the Sleeper app today. You'll be glad you did. It makes watching these games a lot more fun. But back to the game now. Interesting chess match here between Dan Lanning and Lincoln Riley, obviously, right? Lincoln Riley, whatever you think of him as a head coach, and what I think of him is well documented over the last 10 years on this channel. Great offensive mind, one of the best in football over the last 10 years. Appears not to care at all about what happens on the defensive side of the ball. Dan Lanning, of course, a defensive guy, came up under Saban, then was the defensive coordinator at Georgia under Kirby Smart for a national title run a few years ago, and since getting to Oregon has won a ton of games. Now, he has struggled in some of the bigger games. He has struggled in the postseason. Some of those things are true, but you can't deny the talent acquisition at Oregon and the overall records. They're winning a bunch of games there. So these are two really good coaches, each sort of experts on opposite sides of the ball. So the chess match there, Lincoln Riley, Dan Lanning, sort of who wins that battle? Well, actually, I think they will both win individual battles between the games. I think there will be some times where the Oregon defense stifles the Southern Cal offense. I think that there will be plenty of times where the Southern Cal offense has some explosive plays and scores some points against this Dan Lanning defense. So for me, it comes down to what happens on the opposite sides, the Dan Lanning offense and the Lincoln Riley defense. Again, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I am leaning Oregon here. Home field advantage is so important in the world of college football. I'm leaning Oregon here, but man, 10.5 seems like a lot of points to me for Oregon to be laying here. When you look at the scores of their games against any quality competition they've played this year, Penn State, obviously the loss to Indiana, the close one-possession game that came down to the end on the road at Iowa. And I know it was raining and Oregon had some injury situations there, but it could be raining again this week, and they could have injury situations again this week, particularly at the wide receiver spot. So 10.5 just seems like too much to me, especially given the fact that this Southern Cal team is still playing for a potential spot in the college football playoff. Talked about maybe how hard it would be for either Oregon or Southern Cal, either one, to get to the Big Ten title game because of Ohio State and Indiana being undefeated and expected to win the remainder of their games. But both of these teams still have a spot to make the college football playoff. And I actually want to pull this up here and put it on the screen. These are the college football rankings that came out Tuesday night, so a couple of days ago. Now, obviously, Oregon well entrenched inside that top 12 and positioned to make the college football playoff if they win out, right? They've got Southern Cal this week and Washington next week. So no easy task there for Oregon. They could easily, well, maybe not easily, but they could lose one of those games, right? You've got the Southern Cal game this week. They're ranked. You see them there at 15, playing for their lives this weekend, sort of back against the wall situation for Southern Cal. And then the rivalry game next week against a pretty good Washington team. But if Oregon wins out, I think we can all agree they are definitely in the college football playoff at 11-1, even if they don't make the Big Ten title game. They will be that third Big Ten team. The question to me is, what happens if Southern Cal wins this game? Obviously, two things will happen. Southern Cal will rise in the rankings. They will have beaten the number 7 team, and Oregon will drop. They will have taken their second loss. So Oregon is ranked 7, Southern Cal 15. If Southern Cal wins this game, how high does Southern Cal climb and how far does Oregon fall? And are those two things connected? In other words, most people outside of Notre Dame fans would agree that if Southern Cal wins this game, they should be ranked ahead of Oregon, because Oregon and Southern Cal will have the same record if that happens, and Southern Cal will have beaten Oregon. So it makes almost perfect sense to say, oh, well, this is easy. Two teams have the same record. Southern Cal won the game. We're going to move Southern Cal up to 10 and put Oregon at 11, whatever it is, right? Everybody would agree that makes perfect sense outside of Notre Dame fans, who for reasons unknown are still ranked 5 spots ahead of Miami, despite having the same record with Miami and losing to them head-to-head. But anyway, I digress. That's a different video. What do you think happens if Southern Cal wins this game? How far do you think Southern Cal will climb? And how far will Oregon fall? And do you think there's any scenario where Oregon stays ranked ahead of Southern Cal, even if Oregon loses the game? Now, obviously, that's an almost impossible question to answer without knowing what happens in a lot of these other games, right? Oklahoma plays, I believe, Missouri. So obviously, if Oklahoma, who is currently 8th, if they lose, they're probably going to fall behind both Oregon and Southern Cal, no matter what happens in that game. So that, Oklahoma losing would be a way for the Big Ten to get an extra team into the playoff if Southern Cal were to beat Oregon. If Southern Cal beats Oregon, they're both going to be 2 losses. And that was kind of the cutoff point from last year. But it's going to be interesting here. You've got Miami at 13, who, of course, has to win out if they've got any chance of getting into the 12-team playoff. You've got Utah at 12, also sitting at 8-2. BYU is 9-1. Alabama at 8-2. Notre Dame at 8-2. Oklahoma 8-2. Oregon 9-1. You see how it's sort of stacked up there with a bunch of 1- and 2-loss teams. It feels like from 8 down, starting with Oklahoma, if any of those teams lose, they're out, right? If Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, Utah, Miami, Vandy, Southern Cal, if any of those teams from 8 to 15 lose, they're out, right? Now, Georgia Tech plays Georgia the last week of the regular season, which is a non-conference game. So Georgia Tech could lose that game to Georgia. If they do, I'm sure they'll drop some in the rankings. But if they make the ACC title game and win it, they still have a chance to get into the playoffs, of course. But anyway, kind of getting off the subject here, which is the Oregon and Southern Cal game. I think this is going to be a really good game here. Can Lincoln Riley's defense hold up on the road, hostile environment at Oregon against an offense that when they get going, if they get going, can be hard to contain? And can the Oregon offense keep up with the Southern Cal offense, which I expect to move the ball in this game? I think it's going to be a really good game. 10.5 just seems like too many points to me, considering how close Oregon has played its quality competition this year. So I'm going to take Southern Cal plus the 10.5 points. I think Oregon probably wins because of a significant home field advantage here, but I would not be shocked, given what I've seen from Oregon this year, if Southern Cal goes up there and pulls off the upset. Anyway, I'm extremely excited to watch this game. This is the biggest game of the week, I think. There is a lot on the line in this game here for both teams and for other teams too, because if these teams fall out of the playoff hunt, then that means somebody else finds their way into it, right? And if Southern Cal, who's ranked 15, wins this game, somebody that was in the playoffs last week is going to be out next week, almost certainly. So it's just a massive game for a lot of teams in college football, particularly Oregon and Southern Cal. But let me know what you think down below. I appreciate you watching, and have a good morning.